The Reef Therapy Podcast is powered by ICP Analysis. If you'd like to win a free saltwater ICP analysis kit and a freshwater analysis kit, all you have to do is leave a comment down below using the hashtag What's in Your Water. If you're listening to the audio-only version, head on over to YouTube and you can enter in the comment section there. ICP Analysis will test over 50 elements down to parts per trillion. These tests can also be used to see if there's any undesirable elements in your aquarium as well. Register your aquarium on the ICP Analysis app, fill your sample, place it back into the bag, slap on that included postage, and have your results 1 to 3 days after it's received. More at icpanalysis.com. Hey, Reef Builders, welcome to session number 105 of the Reef Therapy Podcast, powered by ICP Analysis. Today, we welcome special guest Shane "Danger" Coleman, who hails from Cairns in Australia. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, how you going?
What's up, Shane?
It's good to be back. It's been a little while since I've done a reef therapy, so yeah.
Yeah, Shane was a guest on session number 59 with Jeremy, which I was watching a little bit of earlier today. Definitely a good listen. Had a hell of a delay on that, but you know, when you're talking to people on the other side of the planet, that tends to happen.
Yeah, I think that might have even been a live one, or like I can't remember now, but yeah, it was pretty hard to follow that. I'm not sure. Hopefully that doesn't happen today. So the internet and everything is quite backwards here. You can kind of consider it a rural town.
We usually go around the horn and kind of just touch base on things that are happening in our reefing world right off the bat. So Shane, if you want to start off, I may tee you up for this. I've been following along with your story of that micro reef that you've been building in your house, which is pretty awesome. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, I take on way too many projects. I've got this. It's a bad habit, to be honest, of not being able to say no. And if I find a new cool idea, I'm like, yeah, I've got to do that too. So this little idea of this micro reef tank, it came up and I was like, yeah, it's a good little challenge. And it gave me then another mental excuse to put off the other aquarium build that's sitting in the lounge room. So, but no, it was only 5 weeks ago that I started that, and it's pretty chock with corals now. So it's going well. It had its ups and downs, but yeah, it's a cool little concept tank. And living in the tropics and North Queensland, it's hot. It's always hot here. So cooling and keeping that tank at the right temperature came with its fun little challenges. And I ended up running the return line through a little tiny bar fridge that I filled full of rum. So yeah, good little project. Yeah. So.
And then tell me about the livestock that's inside, the corals that are in there.
I've put some spawned corals in there, and then also just like stuff that I've microfragged, like a tiny scollies that I've just got, like they're the size of a shirt button, and tiny hammers that are all just made from single septa frags. So everything is quite scaled down in size to suit the tank that is literally that big. So the whole tank looks to scale, like a fully stocked reef aquarium that could be 4 foot long, but it looks quite to scale because the corals are super tiny. So
yeah, it's so cool to see, because I watched the most recent video and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of corals in there, and they're all so tiny. Is this a PNW customs tank? Did Harley send this to you? Yeah.
So yeah, it's from there, and then it's doing really well. They're a really well designed little tank. So, and yeah, it was easy to set up and everything, but yeah, other than the cooling issue. So
how are you managing that with the corals being so small? I had difficulty with a little 50-gallon cube in my office because I ran out of space so quickly. I couldn't even imagine working on a little pico tank like that.
Or it's, it's only early days. Like the corals have kind of only been in there a week, but I think with like any growth, like any dosing that I'm going to do currently is probably just going to be done with some natural seawater, because it takes under 10 seconds to siphon half of that tank out into a bucket and then tip it out of a little jug and just top it straight back up. The whole water change is done in about 20 seconds. So every 2 days, I just take about half a liter of water out, and then add that back in there, just feeding the corals. And there's, all of the expected signs of cycling have been through, and adding copepods to it for some microfauna, and increasing the natural biological diversity and biome of the tank, because we've got 3 systems here at work. I've just taken little scrapings of this and scrapings of that and put them in the tank as well, because the 3 systems could be quite different in what biome they have, and the more the merrier. It's like I can't really, I don't really know for sure what is in all of these systems, but I guess having a little bit from each one has made it work so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that was one of the things when I was in Australia not too long ago, the natural seawater. We had a whole discussion on this on a previous podcast, so I don't want to like dive down that road too far. But as far as filtration, when it comes out of the ocean, is there anything that goes through any kind of mechanical filtration that you're putting that water through? You just like literally take a cup out to the ocean and use that water?
Well, in terms of the little micro tank, I could just get like my coffee cup and just fill it up and grab it. I wouldn't filter it at all. But for the coral farm here, we've got a 2,000 litre big drum on the back of a trailer, and so we go down and use a petrol pump and suck the water up. And that, but there's never really any need to do any filtration, but we do, if the water is a little bit of debris in it, we can run a filter bag, because there's a filter bag canister on the inlet for the pump. We can run that if we need to. We occasionally, if we remember, shock the storage drum with bleach. So pretty much how much bleach you would use in a swimming pool, we shock it and then run the circulation in the big storage drum. And after about 48 hours, the bleach is gone. It's just dissipated to nothing. I think it's like 2 grams of granulated chlorine per 5,000 liters, and it's enough to kill any pathogens that are in there. So,
very cool.
Nice.
But other than that, we don't do anything.
What's your favorite?
Oh, I reckon twirl. They're just simple, and it's good texture. It's just
Twirl,
plain chocolate, but it's a good texture.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, if you're listening to the audio only version, we're talking about some Cadbury candies that I got when I was in Australia, and I agree. I think the twirl is really good. It's like, it's so weird. It's chocolate, but the way that they kind of like wafer it into, it's like I don't know how to describe it, but it's airy.
It's airy. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like do you get those Viennetta ice creams? They're like an ice cream cake. And it's like layers of ice cream. It's kind of like that in the middle.
That was a sign of pure opulence here for a while.
We went around to someone's house for dinner and they bust out one of those for dessert. You like, that's
Yeah.
You're a top shelf guest.
yeah.
Our friends from Aquahub and Dimax are coming over to Aquashella this weekend, and I have paid them to bring me some Tim Tams, because apparently the U.S. Tim Tams are not the same. So, Salem,
did you secure Tim Tams for me?
We can share.
Okay,
I'm
we're
sure it'll
going
be
to
like,
share.
like drinking and having some Tim Tams. Just
we're
us.
gonna share some Tim Tams. I did not know about this. I would have went in on the payload.
You can also bite the opposite corners off the Tim Tam and then use it like a straw to suck a chocolate milk through it or something.
We can have a little Lady in the Tramp moment, Remy.
So weird. Let's move on. Salem, what's going on in your world here? You are now a graduate of college.
Look at that, big man.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
What's going on
Thank
in
you.
your world right now?
Not a lot of reef stuff, a lot of partying, and a lot of sleeping, to be honest. Don't have a lot, no updates on the tanks. I have been ignoring them the past week and having fun and living life. So things look to be fine. I guess I did do Meckley's little pH method, literally 20 minutes ago. I'm like, I should probably program that. I got a lot of consumption going on. So, well, to be seen if things get nuked, but might be adding I think up to 5 gallons of calc a day now. So things are whirling. But that's really all I'm
Dosing
That's a
doing.
lot.
5 gallons of calc a
Yeah,
day.
yeah. It's not slurry; it's supernatant, so like it's not that hardcore. But like, it allows more control at that point because slurry's kind of scary. I don't know, for me at least, still.
Yeah,
But
you just
yeah, I
haven't
got a
talked
lot
to
of
Jim.
consumption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to see this because I saw you just had a low boy drilled, and I
I need
want
to
to see
plumb
the
it.
I want to see the setup. That's what Reef
Dude.
Recap should be. It should be a tour of your tanks. We still have not seen your tanks.
Okay, I have to plumb the low boy by Thursday. Then that is an appropriate goal. I will get another monster tomorrow, and I will
See.
go at it.
You could do like Kalamazoo Reefer and show your tanks and just have a discussion.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah,
Plumb it
Okay.
while we're
Like it.
recapping.
right.
There will
While you
be
recap.
0 articles written tomorrow. I will have my hands wet. It seems so. I am now. there is
That's
no
the
more
excuse.
deadline.
Plumbing and
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Oh.
excuse isn't this week long of binge drinking and partying. It's I've got to plumb my tank, so I'm not going to have any output.
I'm just gonna be covered with primer. It's gonna be like I'm gonna look like this amalgamation. Yeah, so we'll do that tomorrow. You give me ideas now. So I'll plumb a tank.
like it.
That's what I'm gonna do this week.
I like it.
Nice,
Raj?
nice.
What's going
I
on in
just-
your world?
I just spent a week up in Tacoma, Washington. I was at
Oh,
the
yeah.
RAW conference, which is the Regional Aquatic Workshop, and it's a week long of just workshops, and it's just such a fantastic event. So much learning going on. It's really refreshing to see how much all these aquarists are dedicating into their niches. So you have Elasmo Talks, which I love sharks, but I cannot sit through any sort of Elasmo Talk. I can't do it. But they're just the smallest little details, and it's really cool. But I had an amazing time out there with a lot of people. Great tour of the aquarium. We worked on their new coral exhibit up in Point Defiance Zoo. It's not open to the public yet, unfortunately, but hopefully that is going to go live, I think, August. So in a few months. So
How big?
We'll see. It's a few thousand gallons. It's pretty nice. And then hop down to the Seattle Aquarium, as they did a whole new building as part of their expansion. And so we've done a lot of work over there on every single one of those systems, but not open to the public, and we couldn't even take a sneak peek at it. They were pretty hardcore about there's no CO, and they didn't get any permission from the city to allow any public in there. So that was a bummer, but we'll be back.
Gotcha. And for those that don't know, RAW is like public aquarium, like big aquariums, right?
Yeah. It's a public aquarium show, and aquarists come there to learn and to share what they've learned. We usually sponsor at least 1 or 2 aquarists to come to that, and it's it's great. You get people from all over the U.S. You get from Canada. Lyle from Cairns actually was down there, so it's a pretty big deal. It's a nice show.
That travel from Australia to the US is a bitch.
it's not good, eh? Yeah, it's really not good. The best one I've ever done is a couple of Valiums and about 5 beers before the flight. I think that was one of the last reef stock I went to, and they sat me right down the very, very back of the plane, and there was no one next to me, and I curled in a ball, blanketed up, and they actually woke me up in LA. It was so good.
Wow.
But otherwise, it's rough.
Nice. Yeah. But someone made a good point. Like right when I arrived, I was picked up by one of the sales guys at Alco Hub, and he was telling me that like anywhere that you go, and like if you want to go anywhere in vacation outside of Australia, it's minimum like 6 to 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Singapore is hot.
Yeah, I think Australia's closest main holiday destination, and that's Bali, and that's still 5 hours from here. So
You don't want a holiday in Tassie?
Oh, it's actually beautiful. Like Tasmania is really amazing. There's no reef there is. It's like soft corals and stuff, but gorgonians and things. But in terms of scenery, mountains, and Tasmania is flawless.
That's awesome. Very cool. I just have just a real quick update. I am now the proud father of 2 Chicago sunburst anemones. Let's go.
Woo!
Give it up for the boys.
They
Yesterday,
split?
yeah.
Nice.
So I have 2 clownfish that are raised up from eggs, Uno and Dos, and they live in one 10-gallon tank with 1 Chicago sunburst. There's nothing else in there. And yesterday, this thing looked like butt. I was like, I just need to do a water change. Everything will be fine. And then today there's 2. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Makes sense as to why it was not looking awesome. And now I have 2, which I'm very excited about. So at least
Thank
for
God
now.
it didn't die.
Thank God. Yeah. But also I guess I have an update on the Red Sea, but I'm gonna shoot that. I'm gonna do a video about it. Everything's doing awesome. I can't wait to show everybody the corals inside because there's a bunch now. So that'll be a fun little tour. Hopefully we'll get that up this week. But on to the main program with Mr. Shane. You work at Sustainable in
Reef.
Cairns, right? Sustainable
Yep.
Reefs in Cairns, and which is a coral farm. So your day to day is what?
I guess dealing with customers who want, whether they be export or domestic customers, and fragging corals. That's about it. I do have my hands on a bit of the water chemistry stuff, but that's mainly Christian, the owner of Sustainable, one of the owners of Sustainable Reefs. He tinkers around with water chemistry. We talk about it and everything all day, but if I was to be sitting there adjusting stuff, it's just, yeah, he doesn't like fragging much, and I enjoy fragging. So we sort of just, that's how we keep separate for the day and keep out of each other's hair. There's only the 2 of us here, and it works quite well. So, but
So I'm
yeah, we
interested-
frag all sorts of corals with SPS, LPS, soft corals. It's everything is fair game. So
I'm interested to know. You said the water chemistry and everything, but is natural seawater is that primarily what you're using?
yeah, well, we don't actually water change too much, to be honest. Like it's we're maybe do a water change once every month, just a small one, just to refresh things. But we get that natural seawater drum, and we buffer that to our desired levels, because so we'll run tests on the collected water. We also have a really good baseline of what the water always is from having ICP tests done on it, and we'll know that, well, it doesn't really change much. So from like week to week, it's never really any different unless it's been raining a lot, which is common up here in the tropics. So right now it's still kind of our rainy season, which it's a lot longer than normal. So we do some salt adjustments because it's usually collected at around 32 to 33 parts currently with the rain around. So we'll buffer it up to 35 parts salinity, and then with that comes all of the elements coming in as well that were lost in the dilution. So we'll add calcium, magnesium, carbonate, all that as well as our micro elements, and get it to where we want it. And that'll just sit there in the drum until we need it.
And are you tuning those levels for growth, like accelerated growth, or is that where you'd just ideally like to keep the corals? So when somebody buys one of your farm corals, those are the levels where it should be. Does that make sense?
They're pretty, they're pretty standard sort of parameters that you'd expect to see, like how a salt bucket or something will have the parameters listed on the bucket. A lot of them are really similar. Like alkalinity is probably one thing that changes quite a lot on one of those commercially available salt buckets. We do have like our parameters listed that we commonly target. If we were to be, I don't really chase numbers, or we don't chase numbers too much, but there's a range we like to keep it in, and it's not too much different to what you'd expect in your home aquarium. So there's saying we don't elevate calcium silly high to make it grow. Like, yeah, we don't do anything like that. It's pretty standard. Calcium about 420, 430 ppm. There's fairly standard levels.
So in terms of, like, obviously, I'm assuming pretty large density of coral farm.
Yeah.
One of the issues I have had, this is like probably some noob stuff, but I'm wondering how you deal with it at an industrial scale, is managing nitrates and phosphates, keeping nutrients at a detectable level. So how do you meet the nutritional needs or anything, like a lot of fish, high nutrient input? Like what does that look like for you guys at an industrial scale?
We actually dose nitrates and phosphates. We can't get enough of it. Well, we have a refugium on every system. So the biggest refugium is on my system. We sort of take a system under our wing, I guess. So my system has a 1,800 litre refugium. I should probably just put corals in there because the macroalgae is on the bottom anyway, and there's lots of space at the top for coral. But the refugiums are pretty effective from what we've seen at removing it, but they also don't have a lot of macro in there to strip it out too fast, to the point that we dose quite a lot of nitrate and phosphate daily. It's on a liquid dosing pump 24/7. And as corals are growing, they're using nitrate and phosphate anyway. So we're having to have it in there for that reason, or we'll end up with just really pale corals. The other thing that I think strips a lot of our nitrate and phosphate out, whilst we do dose it, we're also stripping it out with biological media, and we aerate that media. It's all like it's a mixture of ceramic noodles, Cyperax, that sintered glass media, and then there's scoria, which is like volcanic rock. We use heaps of volcanic rock, which is why vanadium is probably quite high in.
I was just about to ask you about metals. Yeah.
Yep.
Vanadium. But there's never anything negative really about it. We get some really nice pink coloration and sponges. There's so many sponges. Anything, if it's a dark spot, you like sponge that's growing there everywhere. So that's vanadium for you.
Interesting. Got to think on that. That's cool.
Yeah, Salem's getting ideas right now with his sponge stuff.
Sponge stuff.
So I have a question. One of the most interesting subjects in the hobby for me is coral spawning, and anybody who's listening to this podcast knows that I'm super interested in it. When I was in Melbourne, you and I were kind of going back and forth on the subject, and you had mentioned something about stress spawning. Can you expand on what this is, how it's being used? Is it ethical? What sort of information can we glean from this?
So like a lot of spawning that happens, and it's like that's documented and where the corals are being grown from spawn, and it's kind of attached to wild collection. So when you're bringing wild collected corals, which in my opinion is 100% sustainable, because we've got quota limits and everything like that, it always has been sustainable. But when you're bringing these corals home, you belt them off the reef with a chisel and you bring them home. They're in a bucket. They're not in amazing water. They've been bounced around in a boat. Sometimes they're sitting on the deck of a boat for a week. They're not in a bucket of stale water, but they're sitting out of their environment. And it's not uncommon to have these corals spawn in the buckets, bringing them home, or in their containers, or when you're putting them into your holding system. Because we used to wild collect at Sustainable Reefs. We don't anymore. We do buy wild corals off other collectors when we need something that's new. But we do focus on just growing what we have. But when we were wild collecting, corals were spawning continuously on the drive home. So bringing them home in buckets, and there'd always be spawn sitting there. It could be gonny, it's usually acro. Acro is terrible for spawning, and a lot of people that are importing coral, like all of your big coral importers around the world, would be well accustomed to spawning time and acros. Like they're receiving the shipment and the bags are just soup because the acros have spawned. But it's now growing that spawn. Typically people would have just done a water change and be like, yuck, that stinks, it's gross. But now people are settling that spawn and growing it, which is really cool because we can finally see more information and growth rates on stuff. But so this coral's essentially spawning from stress. It wouldn't really, if it would have done it in the ocean or it would have done it in the bucket, it's not really induced spawning. There's some people that are inducing spawning for sure, but I think the majority of spawning that we're seeing in the industry is from wild collected corals spawning in a bucket. and then it's collected and nourished and nurtured and whatnot from that point. So yeah,
Gosh, that's
that
so
was where I was
interesting.
interested at.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I feel like from my perspective as a average hobbyist, we kind of hold coral spawning up on this giant pedestal of it only happens like once or twice a year in the ocean. It's super mysterious as the lunar cycles and all this stuff, and it's been
Nah,
happening for years in buckets on boats.
yeah, it actually happens a lot more common than once a year too, and it doesn't need to be in the spawning time. Um, I've seen it once personally, but there's plenty of people that have been doing wild coral collection a lot longer than I have that have been like divers that have worked for Cairns Marine and stuff. They've been doing it since the start of coral collection, and it's really interesting. If you're out on say a reef flat and you'll see the like linkier starfish, they start lifting up, and then the spawn starts coming out of their back, and then half an hour later you'll see giant clams have smelled this starfish spawn, and they're like, all right, now's the time to go. This could be in like March. It's nowhere near spawning time off the corals. And then you'll start seeing leathers spawn because the clams went. And then you'll see Porites boulders start going because the leathers went. And in the space of a 2-hour dive, you've seen like 10 spawning events all around you that were all triggered by one small spawning event. And that's really common. They spawn throughout the year.
Just a giant reef orgy.
It really is, yeah. Interspecies, intergenus reef orgy.
Yeah.
And I guess my take on that is that if the if the next animal is able to sense that there's spawn in the water, because the fish becomes a feeding frenzy, and if I were to be a clam, and I'm like, righto, now's the time because there's more competition, as in the fish can be eating the starfish eggs, I'm going to get mine out there as well. And that way there's less chance of mine being eaten. That's my theory as to why they seem to do it all en masse, is because if there was just starfish eggs and then the chromies come in and eat them, then there's just one meal. But if there's a lot of different types out there, then there's more chance from different species to actually settle. That's just my theory.
Sense.
I don't know if there's any merit to it, though.
So when spawn has been observed, like on collection boats and things, like what are the conditions of the bucket? Like there's aeration, I assume, right? Or like what does that environment look like?
It's not like there's a lot of coral slime in the bucket because when they start sliming, but the buckets typically have hoses fed from like a build submersible pump that's picking up water from the ocean and continuously flushing and flowing through these buckets. Like they've got holes in them and they're constantly overflowing. So there's nothing really other than the act of chiseling it from the reef and removing it. So essentially an anchor could have dropped through it as well. Like there's just that physical shock of breaking it. But that's from the immediate point. But it's when usually that the spawning, if it happens in the bucket there, that's commonly with acro. But other species that tend to do these stress spawns are doing it in the systems back in the facility, when you've taken them from the water chemistry that they're used to in the reef to putting them in something. It's like they're holding tanks in a facility. You've probably seen them. They're not good. Like they're not designed to grow corals. Like most of your home aquarium systems are 100-fold better than a collection facility. Like, yeah, so our facility here, ours are quite good because we're growing coral, but in a coral collection facility, they're not tend to focus on growing corals. There's not amazing lights over it all. Once the coral collection is done, you usually dump the water out and put new water in. So the water chemistry is probably the main thing that makes them stress out and want to spawn a little bit. So
Interesting.
So what are your thoughts on hobbyists trying to get corals to spawn in the home aquarium as kind of a goal to, stop wild collection or as much wild collection? And, as we kind of see the hobby go towards, export, import bans, all the things. What are your thoughts on the hobbyists trying to attempt spawning at home, settling all the things, just by lighting schedule and maybe even a temperature as well?
Well, first of all, I think still keeping open channels for wild collection is super important, because having access to wild specimens is always like, whether, because if you want to go down just the spawning route, you're going to end up with issues with genetic diversity as well. So having open channels to new broodstock is important if it was just going down the spawning route for the hobby. But there's also species that, like, I know that Acanthophilia has been spawned, or whether it was a stress spawn or intentional, I'm not entirely sure there, but it's been done. Trackies and all these different corals have been done, but the growth rates are so sluggish in home aquariums, it's not financially viable anyway. So seeing that they do grow faster in the wild because of the abundance of food, and knowing that their numbers aren't actually diminished from wild collection in significant enough numbers, the wild collection industry is sustainable. So making a full shift to spawning to me doesn't make sense. But in terms of learning and just having another avenue, like we don't need to just rely on wild collection or anything like that, but having more options to grow corals is always going to be a good thing. And learning growth rates and learning learning anything about a coral that we don't know, like the world of spawning is a very unknown thing. So anyone attempting to do it and having success with it is a huge plus for me. But whether it becomes financially viable, I'm not sure. But me personally, I don't focus on it too much because it's quite slow.
And you're concerned about the lack of diversity with
genetic diversity, I think. Yeah, if you're spawning the same corals over and over again, I think.
How is that different than fragging the same corals over and over again?
It's not different at all. But yes, that's why issues we get like entire strains of coral here. We'll see a mass wipeout and be no excuse. Or like Cyphastria, I don't know. It seems to happen to a few people. It grows so amazing, and then all of a sudden it just goes. It's white, peels back. I had a bit of a chat with a few people here about Cyphastria, and it's just it just gives up too easily. And I don't know whether that's because Cyphastria is probably one of the most propagated corals, and whether it's become weak over the years from everyone fragging it. And yeah, I don't know. Do you guys see that in aquariums?
Yeah, it's happened to me before. I've had a really awesome, Bizarro Cyphastria is what the pet name is here in the U.S. But it grew all over rock, encrusted and everything. And then one day it just was like, I'm gonna give up now. But they get massive. I'm sure people have had great success and have had large colonies of Cyphastria in their tank. And mine is just one example. But I'm sure that does happen.
And, I think it's quite common to see long-term, iconic species like that just die.
It's like burnout.
And that could be due from just being weakened over time from not being just from being propagated over and over again. I'm not sure. There might be a way to test that with comparisons of what biome is on a wild Cyphastria, to use that as an example, to what biome is on an aquarium one. It's probably something that can be tested in some way. But
would there be any correlation between, because we see Cyphastria and frags all the time. I'm sure you guys do as well. But like our aquariums just cannot sustain the energy needed by a larger Cyphastria colony to survive?
Well, since they all kind of work together, like the polyps all work together, you'd think it would be no different to a frag I don't know.
I think that Shane's onto some with the genetic diversity angle. I was reading a paper this morning. It's like a 2024 paper, and it was talking about like genetic plasticity in corals and how it relates to the immune response. So it was talking about the fact that when there's because there is so much differential expression that occurs with corals based on how they spawn. There's just there's not consistency within the genome in large parts, and there's like epigenetic factors that pass between those corals, and basically there's like a constant process of a selection that's occurring with the microbiome, with whatever zooxanthellae clade they have, and how they spawn with their environment, and they're constantly optimizing themselves for that environment. So I think there's something to the idea that maybe if we have propagated these strings either through spawn or fragging for long enough in captivity, there is just like burnout that occurs, and there's not enough genetic diversity that is introduced to that, and you have there could be mutations that occur that just make them not as adaptive, that are more prone to infection, and you eventually get a strain that just sucks. Like you really just breathe the good out of it. So I think
cool.
that makes
There's
a
so many
lot of
colors.
sense.
Ugh.
Yeah. Huh. You're making me think about some stuff. That's cool. That's
But
I
we
think
see that
collection's
all the
good.
time, and like in here on the farm, and it'll be off the stock list for a long time, because I'll like ring up a friend, another hobbyist, and just go, hey, by any chance, do you have any of this meteor shower Cyphastria? All of ours just died, with no explanation. Like everything else is like, oh, it's all happy and great, but it's just pile of dead Cyphastria again, or it could be any coral. A type of Anacropora we keep here as well is also really prone to just completely packing it up and going home for no reason. So
Something
branching
else.
is branching Australian, or is that Indo?
we do get a branching Cyphastria Decadia here, but it's not nearly as branching as the ones that I've seen at coral shows over there.
Same issues with that, or does that grow a little bit better?
Same issue, and that it just forms nodules, not branches.
Okay.
I think the wild specimens of our Cyphastria Decadia branch because they're encrusting vermeted snail tubes, so it looks like branches, but when you look closely, it's just tubes.
What an interesting growth pattern. Effing vermitids.
Yeah.
Salem, you had a question. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Something you mentioned earlier that really piqued my interest was you were talking about single septa frags of hammers. And that's like, I've never seen someone do that. That's really cool, because I've always thought like, do you keep a portion of the mouth, or are you able to actually frag individual septa and round them out without the mouth at all? Like, what's the success rate of doing that? And have you tried it? Like, can you do single septa frags of like any species, or just Fimbrophilia is working?
Yeah. I think any species is capable of, or any species of coral is capable of regrowing from just a few cells. I've seen seemingly dead corals. Well, another classic example is like fungia when they do the phoenix effect. It's dead, and then the whole plate's covered in. Like, where did that come from? It's completely dead. It's covered in coralline algae, and then all of a sudden, where did these little tiny cells come from inside? And they've completely reformed themselves. So the single septa, it's a single major septa, so there's a couple of smaller ones around it. So how they have the taller ones in the middle. So I used to use the tall one, and then there'll be a couple of small ones either side. And they're cut like a pizza that you were rationing out. So it's not 8 slices, there's about 20 slices. And there is a section of mouth, but I don't think it really matters, because it's this long isosceles triangle-shaped frag, and then the tissue actually recedes right down to the middle of the frag. So I'm giving you like a kind of a top view. The tissue recedes from both ends, and then a few polyps start looking a bit happier, and then you see a mouth forming, and then it starts encrusting back over the whole thing. So yeah, it definitely works, and it's actually a pretty fast growth, because when you frag them, it triggers like a panic response to start regrowing. So we can get some pretty fast reproduction of hammers using that method.
So how long does it take for them to typically round out? Do you then begin to frag like the single septa frags once they've healed to get them to round out faster, or what's that look like?
Within 12 months, usually 6 to 8, it's a sort of a head about that big, or a total circular polyp about that big from a single major septa.
Have you done any ancora like that, like the walls at all?
That when they're a wall, I actually cut the way to try and this paint. Anyway, how the side on how the walls go down to the middle and the mouths are down at my fingertips. I actually cut long ways and then cut heaps sideways, so they work out well. And then I mount them sideways so that the mouth part that was down in that valley is actually pointing up.
Interesting.
And then
Wow, I've seen it done.
Sort of,
I've seen it done the other way, where you go just straight perpendicular at at an area of the wall where the walls are actually closer to like the closest part, so it's not you're not doing a ton of damage. Your way is interesting and scary.
That way, I cut them into little tiny squares like this, and only one side of the square has a tiny section of what the mouth area used to be, but there's no functioning mouth. There's parts of it that it would need to regrow. So.
Yeah, you've had a lot of success, I think, with just cutting things and it working. I think one of the biggest for us here in the U.S. is, you'd never want to take a saw or any kind of cutters to an acantho, or as you guys call them, deshies. It's a lot of investment, right? They're usually pretty expensive, and then taking a saw to it is just stressful. But I mean, this is something you do a lot, right?
Not a lot, but I like pushing the boundaries of what you can frag, and it's like, I won't mention like names, but a few people over the years have told me that this is not possible to frag. One of them was a heliofungia. I was just like, you say it's impossible, and I haven't tried it, so let's try it. And then you do it, and then it's successful, and it regrows. And I'm like, well, look there, it's done. Sometimes it doesn't work, and then you go, well, was it me or was it the coral? And you try it again, and it does work. So it's obviously the fragging method or water chemistry at the time. I think the biggest notable reason for success is amino acids and feeding. So amino acids building the protein chains to make the flesh in the first place, and then as soon as the coral actually has a mouth that it can feed, well, now it gets solid food, and then it can make its own amino acids and that kind of thing. So nutrition and feeding to allow the flesh to regrow, because without it, you can make the frag, but if you're not feeding the tank, well, what's it going to grow from?
So 2 follow-up questions. When you're actually using the saw, if like when you're doing like this crazy of cuts, like in my mind, it's like, if I were to do this, I'd kill it, right? So do you actually flush the well in between? Like, do you do iodine dips? What's like the aftercare look like? Do you do amino baths? I know some people do that as like a recovery bath. Or is it just cut and go and it's good?
Sometimes I do amino and vitamin baths. It's a good, you can, again, I've seen really, really, really amazing success with doing that, but why it works, I don't actually know, and it would be good if I could have some way of maybe testing the absorption and test how much amino and a vitamin actually did get absorbed into the tissue, but I don't have a full lab to figure that out and actually test how much did get absorbed into it by putting it in a concentrated bath. But in my experience of doing it, it does work, and I have had some cool results by putting it in a concentrated bath. Bearing in mind, some amino acids are acids, so keeping in mind pH differences of the bath and how long you keep it in there can be detrimental sometimes as well.
So do you have a specific blend that you like?
Well, we make our own, but it's it's commercially available and all that. But it's we do do a few different types we add as well. We're always experimenting as well, like different blends of them, and there's a lot of different amino acids. There's like 192 of them or something like that, if even more. So always experimenting with different ones and seeing what does what. And as for the saw and cleaning that out, I do clean the saw out between species, or at least genus, and sometimes just some Ki3 potassium iodide, throw that in the saw. But that's generally if it's a wild coral. coming in and I'm processing it, but I usually don't worry too much about iodine-based dips in the soil for corals that I'm fragging from our system, because my take on that is, if I'm taking a coral from our growing system and then I'm fragging it, and then you hear like, oh, you need to put iodine on it because it kills the bacteria on the frag. And I'm like, yeah, but it came from our system. So if there's bacteria on it and I'm putting it back in that system, why did I dip it? So I don't. I put iodine in wild coral cutting, but if I'm fragging from our mother stock and everything, there's no dip goes in, just salt water.
Speaking
Makes
of the
sense.
wild, that's people don't realize where a lot of these corals are found. I mean, I'd love to hear about some of just the oddball places that you find corals and then what they're in. You know, I bet that's super fascinating to.
Yeah, I think some of the misconception about corals you hear a lot is like LPS, like dirty water. And I think when people say dirty water or hear dirty water as an aquarist, it gives themselves the golden ticket to be lazy. Whereas, to me, dirty water, it's dirty with zooplankton, microplankton, phytoplankton, and it's all of these food particles that are stirred up. That is what the dirt is in or on the reef and out on the reef, and depending on what type of reef and what area of reef you're in, depends on how much dirt is in the water. And a lot of the corals that you find in these food-rich zones are the LPS and fleshy corals like Desh, the acanthos, Trachophilia. They're found in mud, but it's silty mud. It's not dirt. You certainly wouldn't have that in your aquarium. So having a dirty aquarium, you're not. It's like, that old miracle mud stuff. Yeah. They're essentially found in miracle mud, but it's that environment that harbors benthic life, and there's all these little critters that live in that. And it's when you get a little bit of waves and the tide comes in, it stirs it all up. That's what the corals are eating. They're not eating dirt, or they're not eating high nitrates and phosphates. So that's in my opinion, all corals need SPS water, and then the level of food is what's different.
Yeah, I remember getting shipments of zoanthids in, and they were just shipping dirt. It was just in that silty mud, right? Very little water. It was just that and newspapers.
Yeah.
That was so
and
crazy to see. Oh, God, the smell. You had to remind me about the smell. I had blocked that out of my memory. Just suppressed it down, pushed it down, and now it's back. God, I could taste it. But yeah, it was that was crazy to see. And like we try to keep our tanks so pristine, and here it is. Just throw it in some mud and ship it across the planet, and they're great. They looked awesome.
Yeah,
but it's that mud that harbors that benthic life and allows these little tiny creatures that are completely overlooked on day-to-day basis. The microfauna that is what the corals are actually eating. When their big fleshy polyps are stretched out across that mud, they're constantly bringing their polyps in, and if you watched them in a time lapse, they're not just sitting there. It's constantly that, and they're bringing all of this benthic life into themselves. So, yeah.
Have you seen anyone do like a biotope, like have all of that mud and keep a deshi in there or something instead of sand? Like, has anyone try to replicate the exact environment?
I can't recall. It would actually be really cool to see, because the mud, in my opinion, looks awesome. Like it's natural. I'm in the new aquarium that I'm building. It's just a water box, 4 foot. What do they call it? A 130.4, I think I've got sitting in my lounge room at home, and I'm doing something pretty crazy with that I've never seen done. And talking about biotopes, is I'm building the most natural looking reef, because to me, reef aquariums, your home of aquariums, they're too vibrant. There's every color of the rainbow and more. And when you actually dive out on the reef, it's 50 shades of brown, and every now and then you'll find something really nice. And so my new aquarium will be focused on all of the unsung heroes of the reef, the brown corals that are literally everywhere. Porites boulders that are just brown. They're never green. They're just always brown. And my whole tank is just brown.
Yeah.
So
That's
I've started
cool.
collecting corals over the last probably 2 years. I've got a big collection downstairs of brown herpolither, and they're just like you couldn't pay most reefers to put these in their tank, and here I am going, yes.
That literally sounds like shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think it'd go over really well.
The
Here in the
nuances
US.
in the texture.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
it. It's like there's textures and shapes and everything, and yeah, it's like in terms of running gear, the tank's got like some of the best tech sitting on my floor at home, ready to plumb into it. Some of the best tech and equipment you could possibly have, and it's just getting brown corals added to it. So,
But they won't be brown for long, because I remember that's what I used to do. Is I would hit up the wholesalers and ask them for all their brown, all the stuff that they can't sell. They'd sell it to me for dirt cheap, and I would throw them under halides, just your 20K halides, and see what happens. And a good 80% of them would color up.
well, it's funny you should mention that, is because I'm targeting species that I've never personally seen in any color other than brown. So I don't believe there's too much chance of them coloring up or changing. Like I'm even putting brown palithoa in there because I've never seen them any other color. But there's another species of acro that I want to put in there is cervicornis. As far as I know, it like 99% of the wild examples, it's brown. And then there's this really disgusting olive green version that occasionally comes up. I think elkhorn coral in Florida, that's brown, and it only ever seems to be in brown. You don't really get it in another color. So there's a lot of species out there that are just brown and always brown. And they're the ones that I'm targeting because I don't want that chance of them coloring up. That's trying to avoid that, which is, I guess you could always just keep your tank water dirty and have them in less than favorable. But ideally, I want my corals to grow and maintain these shades of brown. So
There you go. How's that for a specific tank right there?
yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but I really need to pull my finger out and plumb this tank in so I can fill it. I'm actually really excited to build it because I've never seen anyone do it.
Don't let anybody document it but us. I don't want to see Parker's Reef or any of those guys from Australia that are on YouTube up there documenting this. I want you to save this for us on our next trip to Australia. I want to see this thing because I'm super excited about it.
It's like a revolutionary, subversion of the mainstream. It's like a countercultural art piece.
That is Shane.
That's so cool.
It's his whole being.
It's a finger to the zeitgeist, man. It's like, no, we're 50 Shades of Brown.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to call it? It needs a name.
I should, yeah. Well, my old tank I used to call Black Box Reef. I could call it, just change the black to brown, but anyway. I don't know why it was that, but anyway. It's the most natural looking reef. Like when you're diving and snorkeling, everything is just shades of green and dark green and predominantly brown.
Yeah.
So
we've got some awesome coral on the Florida Reef Track and, in the Caribbean, but it's, no wild collection here. It's all endangered and all very scarce at the moment, which is kind of scary. We do get rock flowers out of the Caribbean and also inverts and things like that, gorgs. Yep. But it was funny because I had mentioned the rock flower anemones while we were in Australia, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, those are so expensive here."
Yeah.
I think they're like $20-$30, depending on the coloration of them here. So
I think a few of the ones from the Caribbean make their way over here, which is illegal. But a few of them obviously do make it here and there. But we do have our own species of rock flower. They're not the exact same species. They're much smaller. They top out at about that big. I've never seen them bigger than that. And we also get, they used to be called Stygidacha tapetum or tapetum, and they're like a mini carpet anemone. We get those here, which are quite popular when they show up, but they're very rare. Even for a native occurring species, they're also very rare for us. So, when you mentioned the Florida reefs, I've actually been watching a heap of videos on them with the lionfish. So it's interesting seeing the scape, watching those guys harvest lionfish. And I'm not focused on a lionfish. I'm looking at all the corals around in the diving, and it's fascinating to see such a different landscape to what I'm used to seeing. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I think that happens to a lot of people who are landlocked like myself. You go out to the Caribbean for the first time, maybe you're vacationing in Cancun, and you go out to the reef on a snorkel trip, and you're like, this is not what the coral in Finding Nemo looks like. This is very, bland, and the most colorful things you see are really the fish and maybe a green sea turtle here or there. But I think a lot of people are let down by that, but that's just that's how it is.
It's pretty
brown.
boring diving. Pretty boring.
Yeah,
For a
I think
non-hobbyist, or for a non-enthusiast for sure. But I mean, I think if you know what you're looking at, like some of the corals that we saw at the Butterfly Pavilion, like Sarah Stevens,
EFAS, man.
Those are amazing looking. They're so cool and so unique. You just don't see that in the hobby.
I was geeking about those.
You should, yeah.
I think too with from a first glance and first perspective, if people like a lot of the reefs off Cairns, that like the major tourist reefs, that if you book a reef trip and when you come to the Great Barrier Reef, a lot of the reefs just off Cairns are quite brown as well. There are definitely really colourful reefs. Like I've dove some of their most amazing tabling acro and just beautiful rainbows of colour. Those sections are pretty rare. But from a first perspective of someone looking at them, you go, oh, it's not very colourful. But after a while of looking at it, one of my favourite things is if you're snorkeling and able to hold your breath, and you're probably told not to touch the reef, but I just grab onto a little piece of live rock and anchor myself there. And then you get right up close with your mask and just look at the tiny little things that are all in around the rocks. And there's more life in one sort of tiny spot. And if you can hold your breath for an hour, you can watch little things buzzing around, and you're seeing nudibranch coming across. It's like there's fascinating life on such a small scale. And then that's if you get past the fact that some of the reefs just don't look like the photos. So, which is normal.
Yeah.
It's totally natural that they don't look like the photos. The tourist brochures will always show the best of the best, but when you find something else to look at sometimes. So
you got to sell the fantasy, right? We
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, and that's with everything.
I want to suggest a podcast that is not ours for 1 second. It's not even in the reefing hobby, but it's Tim Ferriss, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of this man, but he just interviewed not too long ago Craig Foster, who is the guy that did My Octopus Teacher. Went out to the kelp forest every single day and kind of learned from this octopus. And that's kind of like, I think, a good superficial overview of what this man is actually about. He is very into immersion when it comes to seeing, like you had mentioned, Shane, all the microfauna, all the little things, all the cues from the organisms in the ocean to kind of tell a bigger story. And he can tell what's going on just by the mucus trails left by inverts, and it's just so fascinating. Like you said, if you were able to hold your breath for an hour, or maybe you got a tank or whatever in your scuba, just watching one tiny little area of the reef and the amazing amount of life that's happening there, it gives me goosebumps to talk about. It's a whole different ball game. It's not the touristy going snorkeling, going scuba, seeing the turtle, snapping a couple pictures and being like, oh, that was so cool. It's a whole different ball game when you get to that point.
Yeah, and it shows like to me like reef health to me is not measured by just one thing, or seeing a brown coral. Some people, I've heard them on, like, because I go on the tourist boats a fair bit because it's, it's there and it's fun. And you hear them say, "Oh, that's brown." And I'm like, it's actually really healthy. It's a very positive, amazing population of zooxanthellae that's living in there. And then you go, "Oh, I'm boring a tourist."
I'm gonna say every boat needs Shane on it right now. Nemo, no.
Stop that.
So I had a question. We talk about how they try to sell the fantasy, but there's some pretty fantastical coral that comes out of Australia, like all the glitter gonnies and things. Where are those found? You're talking about all the brown coral, but like, are they really that rare? Are they that common? Like, what does finding one of those look like for a collection diver?
When you're when you're swimming on these reefs, the gems are there, but they're for it to take glitter gonny, for example, you'll swim over 50 really boring olive green or brown gonnies to find a red one, a purple one, a bright green one. There are certain locations, like in a trench just out here, it's like a muddy trench, where the Goniopora stokesii, or the golf ball gonnies, are found. And you don't find any brown ones in there. They're all neon green golf balls, and they're just littered around on the muddy bottom there with the Cycloceras and Dioceras and things like that, and a little Cataphilia, Sinarina. They're all littered around together. But in some areas, they're all sort of one color, or they're plentiful. But glitter gonnies in general are rare. Like they're just maybe for every 1,000 gonnies, one has a glittery texture to it. So yeah, highly sought after, especially to farm them. So
still rare even there.
Yeah, definitely. And they're all, like, the majority of the gonnies are found sort of on nice inshore reefs, because they like food, and they're in that turbid water where there is microfauna being stirred up, and they're eating all the little bits and pieces. They're not eating dirt, they're eating live food. So central Queensland, if you're looking on a map, and the Great Barrier Reef extends a massive distance. So it's what are we looking at? Probably 1,000 kilometers from me. So it's like, what's that, 1,500 miles or something, maybe more. That's where the Goniopora hotspot is, around that area.
So
yeah,
what is what's like the rarest phenotype of like Australian coral that you know about? You see like 1 in 1,000 glitter gonnies. Is there something that's like 1 in 1,000,000, 1 in 10,000, like truly special?
It's actually some types of scully or homophilia now that are really overlooked. It's light blue, kind of like Remy's background of the blue lights. It's very blue like that, and then striking red, and it's just like a lifesaver ring. It's just blue and red, and they sometimes call them a Superman scully. And I would say they come up way, way less often than a master. So in terms of rarity, it's not that amazing to look at. It's still bright. It's a beautiful coral. But a lot of people will flip out over a really bright UFO bleeding apple or something like that. But those red and blue scullies just turn up way less. Like, you might get one every 1,000 or something like that, or less. So I used to really look forward to finding one of those when we were getting scully.
Are you seeing that? The price of those is just going up right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Every
Good
coral
thing I
vendor's
have
like,
10.
The guy that's sitting on a stash of them that couldn't sell them is like, yes.
This is what insider trading looks like. We all got a
Yeah.
shipment of them right before.
buy GameStop immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But yeah, there's some... Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say we were at Aquamarine Aquaristic, and he's got a ton of the glitter gonnies, and I feel like we never really see that red glitter gonny here in the States. And the green and the blue are pretty typical. They're still very expensive, but that red one I don't really see too often, just out and about.
Yeah, it is rare still here. At one stage, I think I had about probably 30 frags of it here. And when I say frags, they're kind of thumbnail size, so they're not really small. And I was able to grow a fair bit off it, and they were fetching around 600 to 800 Australian each frag at one stage. I think they've dropped a little bit now. But yeah, they're still really quite hard to come by. I've got a few pieces downstairs in the farm that I'm growing stock back from again. So, but it'll take a while. Like it's not the fastest growing coral, but yeah, it does grow. So, but yeah, they are quite rare. But yeah, I was actually at Jono's shop, Aquamarine, I think a week after you went, and I hadn't been there in years. And it was phenomenal. Like I've never seen so much bright ultra coral in my life. It was special.
Yeah, that was one of the cooler shops that we saw. No offense to all the other shops, but I don't really have a lot of interest in reptiles or freshwater. So that seems to be the trend, at least with most of the local fish stores in Melbourne, is that a lot of them also carried freshwater and reptiles, which, by the way, are just bearded dragons and blue-tongued skinks. For the most part, carpet pythons, things like that. But yeah, his shop was really good. I really liked Fish World. Am I getting that right?
Fish World. Andy
shop. His shop was really cool too. Of course, those are the ones that were very saltwater focused. But
it's a bit of a hard one in Australia for local fish stores, is because the saltwater trade is probably 5 to 10% of the market. Probably could even be less. So focusing solely on saltwater, you've got to be really on the ball and have your top of the game to make it in saltwater here. So having your store with a lot of freshwater and reptiles is pretty much keeping the doors open.
What do you think that is? Because we had that discussion there. We're like, it seems backwards, because you've got the biggest reef in the world in your backyard. Why isn't this more popular? But maybe that's exactly why it's not more popular.
That's why. Yeah. I think a lot of people here it's the reef is just, it's there. We can go there on the weekend. That's why I haven't had a reef aquarium in my house for 7 years. I shut my tank down 7 years ago, and I haven't had one. And now I've got this. I brought it upstairs. The 4-foot tank that I'm just building. I brought it upstairs like over a year ago with a fleeting moment of enthusiasm. And I have not plumbed that in yet. Like, it's just, I haven't wanted to, because I look outside, the weather's good today. I'll go over to Fitzroy Island or Green Island or something and have a snorkel, get my reef fixed that way. And I think even that's an extreme example because I happen to live right here. But even other places around Australia, it's only a 2-3 hour flight and you are at the reef. So I think being spoiled with it so close by is I think probably the main reason. And yeah,
so jealous.
I don't know if I buy that. I'm not a golfer, okay?
Skeptic.
But I know a lot of people that just love golf. I mean, that is what they live for. They read golf stuff, they watch golf on TV, they go watch golf, and they play golf. And then they will have a golf simulator in their house, right? They live on a golf course, but they have a sim in their house. So access to golf for them is very, very easy, but they still want it at home. I just don't, going to a reef is an ordeal. Like, it's a thing that you have to do. And if you're going to dive, now you got to put on your gear, get everything set up. It's not the quickest, simplest thing.
I mean,
you could just have one in your house,
I think it's different too. Looking at it, like talking about the microfauna and things like that too. I mean, I think another reason why I personally haven't had an aquarium at home for so long is because I'm every day I come to a coral farm, and when I go home, my house is full of plants and freshwater stuff. Well,
yeah, but you can just walk outside and see plants, Shane.
Yeah, we also have the jungle meets the reef here. It's a bit of a weird, special place, but I haven't wanted to go home to my house and think, oh yeah, I can't wait to go home and do this again. I'm doing it at work every day. But
that's bringing your work home. But like it's a consumer market.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about it too much past that. But I would have put it down to that. I could be very wrong with it, but yeah,
I mean, you could be right.
I
I think it's probably a lot of the same kind of obstacles that we have here in the U.S. with a lot of people thinking that it's, you know, cost prohibitive, you know, things like that. It's a little bit more complex than freshwater. I'm going to get freshwater people on me for saying that. That's the perception, is that it is more complex.
It's more complex.
Yeah.
It's so much more complex.
They just need the education. What the Aussies need to do.
In every way.
Yeah.
Aussies just need to watch the Reef Builders channel, read all of the articles on the blog, and then they will have the education that they need.
Buy the merchandise.
Buy the merch. Then they
set
will
up
be
the brown
pros.
tank, Shane. Set up the brown tank.
50 Shades of Brown. It has to happen.
Yeah, no, it's definitely happening. I'll start getting some really good photos of the brown corals that I've collected, because like they are just truly hideous in the eyes of a reefer. Like I've been jokingly posting them up in an Australian aquarium group, and you know, like the little hot emoji where it's like that, and just post and like fire emojis and stuff. I've been like posting these disgustingly brown corals and putting them up, and you get like 2 or 3 likes on the post, and yet you can post up the same species but with 5 colors in it, and they're like, whoa. So it's nothing to do with the species. It's
Don't lowball me. I know what I've got. It's just like shit brown.
And it's crazy too. Sometimes a brown coral is actually way more rare. So going back to the scully and that type of scully, the blue and red one being more rare, it is. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that there is no such thing as a brown scully. I've never seen one, and I've asked collectors to keep their eye out for me. I've collected lots of them myself, and I've never ever seen any scully come up as brown.
I guess I've kind of seen like the blue-gray ones. That's about it, though. Yeah,
but never
like
a chocolate
pale
brown.
Orange.
Interesting.
I've seen Bowbanky in brown, which is close, but never a brown scully. So to me, finding a brown scully would be the holy grail, because of like it's never going to be worth a lot of money because it's perceived value. But in terms of rarity, a brown scully to me is the holy grail of rarity in that species.
I bet a collector would pay out the ass for it. Like, imagine the contrast. Like, you've got like the most insane master next to that. That looked pretty cool, I think, in a garden.
Yeah,
all right.
That's why
Someone's
got to
get on it.
hit me around.
Well, I look forward to seeing it.
Sustainable is also sitting on a whole host of brown scully right now.
I wish.
He has micro frags of it. He's been doing the work.
I look forward to seeing this brown tank, and I support the brown.
I do have one question before we wrap up, and that is, why can nobody keep Australian gold torch alive?
I don't know. See, I had back to the single scepter fragging. I actually had a whole bunch that I was fragging in that method as well. Went from I think 80 heads or polyps to 500 plus in just over a year. They were fragging really successfully, and I don't know whether it was my fragging and the maybe weakening of them, but I had nearly 100% wipeout also. At the same time, we had a whole bunch spawn in the system, and all of the little gametes and everything settled around the tank they were growing on the egg crate. And I've pulled them off and put them on tiles, and they're going fine. But I know a lot of the gold torch, for some inside information on where they're collected. Super shallow water, for one. And I think the deepest we ever really bothered to get them was about 6 meters deep, which is still fairly shallow in terms of LPS. Yeah. But a lot of the gold torch was exposed on low tide, like literally out of water by like a good 1.5 to 2 foot. So I think they do like a lot of bright light and high oxygen. So kind of treating it maybe like strawberry shortcake acro. That's a reef type coral.
Did
so
you
that
see
could be one key.
Did you see the strawberry shortcake at Aquamarine that they
No,
had in
I
that
missed
front
that
tank?
one.
They
Oh,
had
in the big display.
yeah. It's in the video that we just recently posted. You got to check it out because I'd heard you talk about how most strawberry shortcake gets that really kind of dark green base with the kind of the pink polyps.
Yeah, after a while they tend to do that in most aquariums, but
This was like fluorescent, fluorescent. I don't even know how to
Nice.
describe the color of it, but he's like, we've had this one going for about a year at this same color, so maybe
Nice.
it's gonna stick. So
yeah. High light and high oxygen, I think it's the key to Anthocercis, the Fuego, and strawberry shortcake and all that. I think, yeah, because they're on like crashing waves and pumping 2,500 par sunlight. So,
wow.
yeah, that's just where
Hey
they are.
lads,
I think that's an interesting observation, at least from a wild standpoint. I know we're doing our best to mimic the ocean and to mimic the environments that they come out of, but I think the initial instinct for any hobbyist is to kind of put a torch toward the lower part of the tank, lower to mid part of the tank. It's you don't see anybody putting Australian gold torches at the top of the rock structure, but maybe that's
time
one
to
of
try
the
it.
keys. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's two main types of the Aussie ones there. Like if they get called 24K, where the whole stem is gold, they were the ones we used to typically find exposed on low tide, and I think that was because like the color wasn't ever shaded, and that the half bar ones were always a bit lower and between the 6 to 10 meter range, but we never really even bothered getting them because they're less valued. So
Were the Aussie like the HGs, like the green base ones, also up top?
usually a little bit deeper, like as in the 6 to 8, and they're actually I normally find them up here in Cairns, whereas the normal gold stem torches are down south in the central Queensland area. So that's where you'll get all corals everywhere, but there is hotspots for certain corals. So yeah.
Very awesome. Well, Shane, I'm sure we could sit on here and talk reef for hours and hours, but you've got a shop to run and you got to get back to work. It is morning where you are. We're about ready to hit the hay for the night. Did you guys have any other questions before we get out of here? All good.
Ah, that was good.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Shane.
Yeah. Thank you so much
No
for coming
worries.
on.
Always happy to join in.
We appreciate it. We'll have you on more often for sure. Thanks for joining us on the Reef Therapy podcast powered by ICP Analysis. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.
See you.
See you later.